Everyone everywhere seems to have a plan for successful classroom management. How do you weed through what is out there to be successful in your class? I have two signposts for you. One, will this strategy line up with you, your personality, your humor, your passion, and your philosophy? And two, is it evidence-based? Not necessarily in that order. Hi there, teachers. Marian here from Engaging Curiosity. Now let's dig into those 13 transformative classroom management techniques. Let's start by discussing what is evidence-based classroom management. I love classroom management, and I strongly believe that it is important to use research-based or evidence-based classroom management strategies and techniques. Remember, strategies are things you think about and decisions you make that direct your other actions. Techniques are what you do with the hope that you might improve with practice day by day, a skill that you work on. So my evidence-based classroom management techniques are strategies that have been tried and tested in multiple classrooms with many different types of students and by many different types of teachers. The technique is how I carry out the strategy so that I am gaining more skill day by day, creating more likelihood I will be successful. So the first steps in classroom management techniques. In earlier blogs, I have discussed a positive approach to classroom management based on behavioral research methods and the groundwork that we need to lay for all students. So let's do a quick review of those first. Essentially, the cornerstone of any evidence-based teaching methods for classroom behavior framework includes these core strategies. 1, establish clear and consistent expectations, preferably in collaboration with the students. 2, use positive reinforcement to teach and encourage the expected behaviors. 3, use nonverbal cues to redirect disruptive students. 4, use proximity to dial down students who are being disruptive. 5, use visual aids such as anchor charts to remind students of the expectations. 6, review expectations regularly at first and then as necessary. 7, teach your social skills and use restorative practices to address conflicts. 8, make certain there are movement breaks during instruction. 9, differentiate the works to be certain students are able to do the work you have asked them to do. Whew, I know that's a lot, and still you can't get through to some of your students, so what do you do next? When do you implement other classroom management strategies? So I remember one boy who struggled to read first. The first time I read with him, he came upon a word that he couldn't read, and in his pain and frustration, he literally kicked a chair across the room. I had a choice in that moment about whether to react or to respond, and I took a deep breath and I responded. I backed off of that reading passage, which technically was at his level, and we worked on something that was easier for him. I needed time to create a plan, and he needed to rebuild himself. He was all personality, and I really liked him. Behaviorally, he was definitely all systems go, but underneath it, he was a very bright boy who was reading at least 2 years below grade level. I knew that his pain and confusion ran deep. Intuitively, he knew he should be able to read, but somehow he could not. I would be frustrated too in that circumstance. So regardless of my compassion for him, or maybe because of it, I don't know, I knew that for us to achieve any success together, he needed to be on some kind of behavior modification plan. I also knew that he was not listening to his teacher. Because I was in learning support at that time, it was my job to create the plan and see if I could work with the teacher to get it implemented. So then how do you go about finding evidence-based teaching methods? So you might be feeling overwhelmed when you get to a situation where a student isn't responding and at your wit's end. You've learned there is no easy answer or shortcut. What now? You need to call in the reinforcements. You are ready to kick a student out of the class to avoid having to work with him or her, or because you are overwhelmed and feel that you don't have time to work with him or her. Hopefully you find yourself in a supportive environment, and others with more or different training and experience will share their wisdom. However, I'm sharing the following 13 transformative strategies that are opportunities for you to take the lead if your school or situation does not offer much support in the way of support. As I head into these transformative classroom management strategies, I'm going to remind you to use the link below to download your free classroom management checklist. Identify your goals and then check them off step by step. Okay, so back to evidence-based management examples. Some of the evidence-based management examples your support team suggests may look like the following. There are many, many different ways to address disruptive behavior, and each classroom and student are unique. I can't possibly list all of the options for you, but but here are some effective evidence-based examples that I've implemented and been successful with. Look through the following and pick what best aligns with your classroom management philosophy. If you don't have a classroom management philosophy, check the description below for the link to my blog post on creating one. Anyways, so now let's get started. Everything I share will have a link to more on the strategy that you can find in the description below, so more like blog posts or videos to help you through. So 1, a behavior contract, which clearly outlines the expectations and consequences specific to that student. 2, a token reward system. Usually this will include some kind of paper on which you can track behavior, and when the student gets enough points or has reached the goal, they get a reward. 3, behavior chart or point system to track and reward progress. As mentioned, this would go with the token reward system. Number 4 would be a designated workspace or cool down area. This was a part of my classroom, and I made absolutely certain that it was not perceived as a timeout area for punishment. It also always became so popular that by the end of the year, I had multiple quiet zones. This is great as it takes the stigma away from the student who needs it. Number 5, offer choices. In earlier posts, I discuss at length the importance of student choice. However, for disruptive students, this is even more important, and it needs to be very intentional. Always give them 2 options, both of which you can live with. 6, model self-regulation. I am hoping that if you have reached this point, you are teaching and implementing self-regulation instructions and opportunities for all students. With disruptive students, it can be important to say things like, just give me a moment, please. I need to take a breath and to calm down. 7, timers and countdowns. I use the app on my phone. Initially, there was a lovely chime that was recommended and completely ineffective. One day, the students recommended Chewbacca, and there was a ringtone for that. Chewbacca it was, and it was effective. So 8, use restorative practices. Ensure your classroom is a place of safety and refuge for all students. 9, collaborate with the parents. Involve parents in behavior management plans. 10, additional academic support and differentiation. Differentiation has been mentioned in the essential list necessary for the whole class. However, it is so important that it bears repeating. 11, a team meeting or whatever it may be called in your school. The composition of the team will vary, but you are hoping it will include you, any classroom support you have, an admin or someone from learning support services, and maybe a parent, but probably not initially. The purpose will be to get everyone on the same page and brainstorm together. 12, seek support. That could look like a school counselor, behavior specialist, learning support, educational psychologist, administrator, speech language pathologist, occupational therapist. Ask everyone you can. If your school has very few people from whom you can draw, just keep doing your best, keep looking it up, keep looking for information. 13, reflection. Teaching is rewarding, but it is also very hard. Track what you are doing so you know if something is working. Reflect on what is or is not working, and then you can tweak it. As I want to wrap up, I want to share a couple of last-minute words on classroom management techniques. If evidence-based teaching methods aren't working for the student, don't give up on the student or yourself. Remember, I shared the difference between a strategy and a technique. Maybe try the same strategy, but come at it from a different angle. And in that way, change your technique. I mentioned a student I worked with earlier in the post. I primarily used a behavior contract that he took home to his parents. They gave him a huge reward, not my decision, but theirs, and for following the plan. He listened to me, managed his behavior, and we made some progress in his reading. However, his classroom teacher did not join me in this approach, and he continued to be disruptive in class. At the end of our year together, there was no behavior plan, and he continued being disruptive. I was very sad, but I did learn a lot from this. Hugely important to me was the knowledge that he made appropriate choices for me, but not in the classroom. This tells me that when implemented, this strategy can be very effective. However, I also have to recognize that it may not have been an idea that resonated with the teacher. Maybe the teacher preferred more intrinsic rewards, as do I, and for that reason, she was not comfortable with implementing it. I can only do what I can do. I can only control what I can control, and I can only change what I can change. My heart remained open to working collegially, of course, but I did not own the outcome anymore. I prayed, communicated, tried, and trusted, and then I let go, which is not always easy. So here's what you can do. I encourage you to take every step that you reasonably can, and please notice I did not say possibly can, to support your students, because you are responsible for setting up the essentials of classroom management. You are responsible for reaching out for help and you are responsible for recognizing when you can't do anything anymore, and you must take care of yourself. I do not encourage you to throw up your hands and throw in the towel, because ultimately you still have to manage the class with the student in it. However, you can recognize the hard work you are doing and remain consistent with love and consequences. If you are implementing the first 13 strategies, or at least trying to every day, then you are already doing a ton. You are changing lives. Before you go, I want to remind you to download my free checklist to help you keep track of where you are on track with your classroom management techniques and set some goals for the future.